This is what's best for the American people. The majority of Americans are going to benefit because of this one bill. Well, that's what we're being told. Because just last night, this new bill was approved and it advanced in the House Rules Committee. This happened last night. What you need to understand is that this was a key hurdle that many were unsure if this would even get passed. But good news, it advanced with a vote of 7-6. So again, it was a very close vote. But why does this matter? Well, this matters because this key hurdle, it was one that many did not think was even going to happen. But this actually advances the bill into the House for a vote today. Later on today, on Wednesday, May 31st, we are going to see the House of Representatives vote on this debt ceiling bill. Now, I will address some of the things that are in it in just a minute, but I do want to talk about what is currently being said and why some are saying that this may not be the bill that many people believe it's going to be. The first reason why. This bill, it is supposed to cut spending. That's what Republicans wanted. Does this bill actually cut spending? According to the Congressional Budget Office, yes, it will reduce spending by $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. So in 10 years' time, we will reduce spending by $1.5 trillion. You know how much more our debt is going to go up and going to increase over the next 18 months? $4 trillion. So over the next 18 months until January 1st, 2025, we are going to see our national debt go from $31.4 trillion. It's going to increase by $4 trillion. So just under $36 trillion in the next 18 months. That's what's going to happen. Now, I do want to show you what's in this bill. Okay, and then we will talk about why this bill is very interesting in the fact that both sides are claiming victory on the same pieces of legislation, the same aspects of the bill. Both sides, both Democrats and Republicans, are saying this was a victory for us. But again, what's crazy and what's going on right now is that the American people are looking at this bill thinking, well, what's really in it for us? Well, let's look at this. So here's the description of the bill. This is actually from the Congressional Budget Office. This is what they put together just the other day to give it to the House Rules Committee. Well, it says that this is what's in it. Establish statutory caps on discretionary funding for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 that would be enforced by sequestration. Then it says set limits on most discretionary funding for each year from 2026 through 2029 that would be enforced using the Congress's procedures for considering budgetary legislation. Rescind certain funds provided to the Internal Revenue Service or the IRS and related agencies under public law. Modify work requirements for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs or SNAP and Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF. To rescind unobligated balances from specific accounts provided by 6 laws enacted between 2020 and 2022. And then appropriate $22 billion for non-recurring expense fund of the Department of Commerce. Goes on to say appropriate $45 billion to the Toxic Exposures Fund for veterans' health care and associated expenses. Amend provisions of current law that regulate permitting of certain proposed energy-related projects. Terminate the current suspension of payments, interest accrual, and collections on defaulted loans in the student loan program 60 days after June 30th, 2023. And we will talk about this in just a second. Require the executive branch to follow administrative pay-as-you-go procedures before finalizing certain administrative actions and temporarily suspend the debt ceiling. That's what's in it. That's what's in this bill. Now, let's talk about this one right here. To terminate the current suspension of payments, interest accrual, and collections on student loan programs. Why are we going to talk about that? Well, the reason is because both Republicans and Democrats are fighting over who is victorious in this one. Because Democrats say that Republicans didn't include in the Supreme Court's ruling in their student loan repayment plan. So right here it says 60 days after June 30th, 2023. Well, you know what's going to happen between now and June 30th? Well, the Supreme Court should be able to come out and have a ruling. And if the Supreme Court rules that no, President Biden does not have the legal authority and we cannot just go and forgive up to $10,000 in student loan debt, well, guess what? If that happens, let's say on we'll just use June 5th. Okay? June 5th, for example. If June 5th is the date, guess what? In President Biden's in his whole thing, he says that 60 days after the Supreme Court rule or June 30th, whichever comes first. So again, that's what President Biden, that's what they agreed to. Well, what Republicans did is they just did the student loan program 60 days after June 30th, which would be sometime in September. Guess what? This is why Democrats say it's a win for them, because if the Supreme Court comes out, let's say in the next 5 days, and says, you know what, we don't agree, we are not going to approve this, this is something we're blocking, well, guess what? It's 60 days after June 5th. So was that July 5th, August 5th? Okay, now I know it's not exactly right, but somewhere in the beginning of August, that's when the student loan repayment pause would expire. That's when people would start having to make payments. So Democrats are simply saying it's a victory for us because Republicans missed this. That's it. Which is crazy. But Republicans argue that they got the win here because student loan payments, the student loan payment pause cannot be extended. Once this bill is signed and passed, the student loan repayment pause cannot be extended. This is something that they are blocking. So that's where they're saying that this is a major win for them, because if they let this drag on, if the Supreme Court ruled and said, no, we are not going to approve of this student loan forgiveness plan from President Biden, guess what? There's a good chance we would have seen another student loan repayment pause that would possibly go until January 1st, if not even a little bit further. So that's where Republicans say that it's a major win for them. They're both claiming victory on work requirements as well. Democrats say that Democrats are saying that they got the win because Republicans didn't get as much in terms of work requirements, and Republicans are saying that no, we are claiming victory because we got work requirements included when Democrats said no, they would not negotiate, and then they negotiated. So that's kind of what we're hearing there. Here's a very interesting thing that's happening right now. And if you remember back in, January or February, whenever it was, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who wasn't the speaker at that time, he was trying to be voted in as the speaker. Well, it took him multiple attempts and votes, and he had to promise certain lawmakers, well, pretty much all of Congress, he had to promise them certain things to be able to actually get voted in. Well, what's happening now, and I want you to listen to this from Republican Representative Matt Gaetz, but here's what he has to say. And this is interesting because this is kind of what we are already expecting. Listen to this. He says, and I quote, "If a majority of Republicans are against a piece of legislation and you use Democrats to pass it, that would immediately be a black letter violation of the deal we had with McCarthy to allow his ascent to the speakership, and it would likely trigger an immediate motion to vacate." He goes on and says, "I think Speaker McCarthy knows that. That's why he's working hard to make sure that he gets, 120, 150, 160 votes. And that's why those of us who are not supportive of the bill are trying to point out that many of the changes are cosmetic in nature. Right now, there's 25 House Republicans that have said that they will not vote for this bill. We need 218 yeses for this bill to pass. So later on today, okay, tonight I think it's going to happen at, I believe, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is when they're going to vote on this bill. So later on tonight, we are going to know if this new bill is going to pass through the House of Representatives or not. If it doesn't pass, that's going to be disastrous for the American people. The stock market's going to sell off. It would not be good news. If it does pass, for one, that is good news. The bad news might come if we see there's a lot of Republicans that vote against it, and it requires Democrats in order to pass. If that's the case, there's a good chance Speaker Kevin McCarthy is going to be outed at some point. So just keep that in mind. So I just wanted to fill you in on what's going on at this time. But again, what we are hearing is that this is the best bill for the American people because both sides, Democrats and Republicans, are saying that they are victorious. When in the end, maybe they're both saying that because neither one is getting what they want, and it's more of a middle ground bill that is going to be best for the American people. But as we get more information as to what is going on here, who this is actually going to benefit, I promise I will fill you in on all the latest news and updates. Again, just want to thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news. And again, I will see you guys on the next one.